Hey guys, I'm JC and today we're playing Kodama and Ishai. This is a blink deck that looks to take advantage of ETBs in combination with Kodama's ability to generate massive value. If you'd like to see how this deck was built, then make sure to stop by the channel where we have a deck tech discussing all of the included cards as well as the overall strategy. Let's see if we can overwhelm our opponents with Kodama value. Alrighty guys, let's see who we're playing today. We have Mayael the Anima, we have Oona Queen of the Fae, and finally we have Tawnos Solemn Survivor. Right, if we have a look at our opening hand, I think it's a pretty strong keep. Somber Sage is probably one of the best ramp pieces in our deck. We also have Cultivate, we have access to card draw and some interactions, so pretty easy keep for us. Oona plays a land for turn, and that is it for them. Tawnos just plays a tap land for turn, and then they pass it to us. We draw Aspara's Headquarters for turn, so let's play that land, and then we'll pass it on over. Mayael plays a tap land for turn, and that is it for them. Oona plays a land, and now they cast a Thought Vessel. So now they'll have no maximum hand size, and after that they follow up with a Skull Clamp. Equipped creature gets +1/-1, whenever a equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards. And that is it for the Oona player. Tawnos sacks their land for turn, they put a land into play tapped. Next, they play their actual land for turn. A Mistveil Plains. They can pay a white tap, put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. Activate if you control 2 or more white permanents. And then they pass it to us. We draw a land for turn. So let's just play our forest for turn. And then we'll leave it there. Mayael plays a land. And they cast a Lightning Greaves. But they pass it from there. Oona plays a land, and it is a Reliquary Tower. So now they definitely have no maximum hand size. And then they cast a Rings of Brighthearth. Whenever you activate an ability, if it isn't a mana ability, you may pay 2. If you do copy that ability, you may choose new targets for the copy. After that, they cast a Shadow Spear. A quick creature gets +1/+1 and has Trample and Lifelink. And then you can pay 1, permanent your opponent's control, lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And that is it for them. Tawnos plays a land for turn. Now they cast a Felwar Stone. After that, they also cast a Talisman of Dominance. Finally, they cast a Thousand Face Shadow. It has Ninjutsu for 4 and flying. Whenever Thousand Face Shadow ETBs from your hand, if it's attacking, create a token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. The token enters the battlefield tapped and attacking. And that is it for the Tawnos player. We draw a land for turn. Alright, well, seeing as 2 of our opponents are getting off to quite a good start, getting down some engine pieces as well as mana acceleration, I think we have to make sure that we actually keep up here. So what we'll actually do is we'll play our forest, and I think we'll get down our Somber Sage, so we can hopefully resolve Kodama next turn. I would play it a little slower here normally, but just seeing how fast our other opponents are actually going at the moment, I don't think we're going to have the time. Mayael plays a land for turn. And now they cast their commander. Pay 6 mana tap, look at the top 5 cards of your library, you may put a creature card with power 5 or greater from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Now it looks like they move to equip their Lightning Greaves to their commander. They go to combat, let's see if they swing with Mayael. They don't, and that is it for them. Oona plays a land for turn. A Mystifying Maze, so they can pay 4 tap, exile target attacking creature and opponent controls. At the beginning of the next end step, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Next, they cast Ashiok Dreamrender. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library, and -1 target player mills 4 cards, then exile each opponent's graveyard. Well, Ashiok is going to actually hurt us there with our fetch lands, so we're going to have to take care of that pretty soon. Now it looks like they're activating Ashiok targeting Tawnos, and they're using their Rings of Brighthearth to copy that. The copy also targets Tawnos here. So they're going to mill 8 cards in total, and it looks like one of the hits they actually get is Kozilek. So when it's put into a graveyard from anywhere, its owner shuffles their graveyard into their library. The second trigger goes off. It looks like they mostly hit some lands there, as well as a Thopter Shot. And that is going to be it for them. Tawnos plays a land for turn. And now they cast a Smothering Tithe. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If the player doesn't, you create a treasure token. Next, they cast their Commander Tawnos. 2 tap, create a token that's a copy of up to 1 target artifact token you control, mill 2 cards. Then for 4 mana tap and sack 2 artifact tokens, exile an artifact or creature card from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of the exiled card, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. Activate only as a sorcery. Now they move to combat. It looks like the ninja goes towards Ashiok. That puts Ashiok down to 3. And that is it for Tawnos. We draw an Acidic Slime for turn, and Smothering Tithe does trigger. We won't pay for it here. Now we're going to cast our Commander Kodama. Then we'll play one of our fetch lands. That's going to trigger Kodama. We're going to put our planes into play. And then we'll just have to pass the turn from here. Smothering Tithe triggers on Mayael's draw step. They don't pay. Now they play a land for turn. And then they cast an Arcane Signet. Then they also cast a Naturalize, and that is targeting the Rings of Brighthearth, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So they might be a little more concerned with the combo potential of the rings as opposed to the mana generating ability of the Smothering Tithe. Now they move to combat. It looks like Mayael is also swinging towards Ashiok. Now Ashiok is only on 1 loyalty, and that is it for their turn. Smothering Tithe triggers on Oona's draw step, and they are paying. Now they play a land for turn, a Cabal Coffers. Not a problem at the moment. Now they activate Ashiok, targeting Tawnos, so that does get rid of Ashiok for us, thankfully. They're going to make Tawnos mill 4 again and then exile. Ooh, and they do hit an Unwinding Clock there. That is actually a good hit. Khan's also a potentially good hit, depending on how they built the deck. Because that version of Khan can blow up lands, if set up correctly. I think we might be seeing the Oona play here actually struggling to get the coloured mana they need to get their commander on board. Because with their Thought Vessel, their Reliquary Tower, and their Mystifying Maze, they are lacking the pips they need, especially now they have Cabal Coffers, which doesn't actually tap for any mana at the moment. And that is going to be it for the Oona player. Tawnos plays a land. Now they start by casting Palladium Mere. Next they cast Oswald Fiddlebender. Pay a white, tap it, sack an artifact, search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed artifact's mana value, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle, activate only as a sorcery. The Tawnos player is certainly starting to look dangerous now. I think we're going to have to put our Angel of the Ruins to good use, as well as our Acidic Slime. Now they activate Tawnos, targeting their treasure token. So they're going to create a token copy of the treasure tokens. They're also going to mill some cards, Azorius Signet, Trickster's Talisman. Now they move to their end step. We'll actually crack our fetch land. We'll put our Breeding Pool into play, or we'll have it come into play tapped. That'll trigger Kodama. We'll put our Misty Rainforest into play. And now we can go to our turn. We draw a Tatyova for turn. Alright, now Smothering Tithe does trigger on our draw step. Let's have a look here and see if we actually want to pay. I think we will actually pay here. Now for our turn, because I do want to start drawing cards, we're going to try to resolve our Soul of the Harvest. That triggers Kodama's ability. We're going to put our Acidic Slime into play because we want to get rid of that Smothering Tithe, seeing as we plan on drawing cards. It's going to put 2 triggers on the stack. We'll put the Soul of the Harvest on the bottom. Our Acidic Slime will target the Smothering Tithe. Let's get rid of that thing. Alright, so that goes down. Now we draw a card. And we get ourselves a Panharmonicon. That's a nice find. Now we'll move to combat. We'll swing in towards the Tawnos player. They just decide to take the damage. That knocks them down to 33. And then we're going to pass the turn. Mayael plays a land for turn. Now they start by casting a Soul Ring. And then they cast a Seedborn Muse. Untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. Well, that's going to be quite dangerous with Mayael. That may have actually accelerated the Mayael player into the #1 threat status. Just on that based alone. And then they also cast a Nature's Law. Okay, well it looks like we've got our work cut out for us, that's for sure. And they move to combat, and Mayael swings towards the Oona player. They will have to take the damage here because they have no blockers. And that is it for their turn. But certainly not their game actions. Now they do untap with Oona. Oona starts by playing a Mana Crypt. Next they cast an Oblivion Sower. When you cast this spell, target opponent exiles the top 4 cards of their library, then you may put any number of land cards that player owns from exile onto the battlefield under your control. It looks like they're targeting the Tawnos player with that trigger. Now it looks like we do have a response from the Mayael player. Now it looks like they're spinning Mayael. So they're going to look at the top 5 cards of their library, put a creature card with power 5 or greater from among them onto the battlefield. Let's see what they find. And it looks like they actually whiffed on that trigger. Now Oona moves to equip the Shadow Spear to their Oblivion Sower. So it becomes a 6/9 with Lifelink and Trample. They also equip their Skull Clamp to it, taking it to a 7/8. And then they pass the turn. Mayael untaps with Tawnos. Tawnos plays a land for turn. Now they activate Oswald. And they find themselves their own Skull Clamp. Now they move to equip the Skull Clamp to their Palladium Mere. In response, Mayael activates their commander's ability. And it looks like they whiff again. That is pretty unlucky for them, that's for sure. Now they move to combat. Thousand Face Shadow goes towards the Mayael player. They just decide to take the damage. In response, Tawnos actually ninjutsus in Covert Technician. Whenever Technician deals combat damage to a player, you may put an artifact card with mana value less than or equal to the damage from your hand onto the battlefield. And then they actually ninjutsu that and put back out their 1000-Face Shadow. So that's a nice little trick. They're going to be able to copy one of their creatures here. But they don't actually, because it looks like you have to create a token that's a copy of another target attacking creature. So they would have had to attack with something else there. And that is it for the Tawnos player. Okay, well, we have managed to keep Kodama around and survive. Mayael also untaps with us, and we draw a Nature's Law for turn. Alright, well, we do need to do some cleanup duty here. Unfortunately, there's a lot to clean up at the moment. And what we'd really like to have in our hand is creature removal, but unfortunately we don't have that at the moment. So I think what we'll actually need to do is start drawing some cards here. So let's do that. Let's draw a card with Soul of the Harvest. And we get ourselves a land. That will trigger Kodama. Let's put our Panharmonicon into play. Now let's crack our Misty Rainforest. It looks like Mayael is going to respond here. And they activate their commander. It looks like they do get a hit this time. They find themselves a Godsire. An 8/8 Vigilance. Tap, create an 8/8 Beast creature token that's red, green, and white. Okay, that is a big boy, but not a problem for us at the moment. We'll put a Hallowed Fountain into play. Pay the 2 life. That's going to trigger Kodama and Tatyova, so we'll put Kodama at the bottom. Let's draw with Tatyova. We get ourselves a land. Now we'll put our other fetch land into play. That's going to trigger Tatyova once again. We get ourselves a Wood Elves. Now let's crack our Polluted Delta. We'll find ourselves a Snow-Covered Island. That'll trigger Kodama and Tatyova once again. This time we get ourselves a Kogla. Alright, there's some creature interaction. We'll put our Plains into play. That triggers Tatyova once again. We're going to draw a card. So we're starting to get on the value train. Ooh, and there's the Great Henge. That is what I like to see. That is definitely what I like to see. So let's actually cast our Great Henge now. That's going to trigger Kodama twice, thanks to our Panharmonicon. So our first trigger, we're going to put our Angel of the Ruins into play. That's going to put a number of triggers onto the stack. We're going to get 2 draw triggers from Soul of the Harvest and 2 draws from the Great Henge. Value players, eat your hearts out. Our first target's going to be the Lightning Greaves and the Soul Ring of the Mayael player. Our second target is going to be both of the Skull Clamps. And they will get exiled, so we won't have to worry about those anymore. We draw a land. We get a Tashana. Then we get an Elvish Piper. And also a Guardian Project. Now we'll put our Kogla into play. That's going to put even more triggers onto the stack. So we definitely have to have our opponent sweat in here, that's for sure. Alright, we will fight Seedborn Muse. And then our second fight's actually going to be on Oswald, because I don't want our opponent to have the ability to tutor what they need. They both go down. We draw a Sakura Tribe Elder, a Brago King Eternal. We also get Emiel the Blessed, and finally another land. Well, from here, I think we'll actually try to get down our Brago, because that's going to give us a lot of blink value. That puts more triggers onto the stack. So let's draw 4 more cards. We get a Thran Dynamo, a Selvala, another land, a Sludge Monster. Alright, for our first Kodama trigger, we'll put into play our Thran Dynamo so we have access to some more mana. For our second Kodama trigger, we'll put Emiel the Blessed into play, because in case our opponents take out Brago, we'll have another chance to be able to flicker whatever effect we need. When that ETBs, we're going to draw more cards. But now that we have so many in our hand, I'm actually going to start saying no to the Soul of the Harvest triggers. We draw a Soul Herder, and finally a Bloom Tender. Now we still do have some mana left, 3 colorless and 1 color of anything that we need. We'll play a land for turn. That's going to trigger Kodama and Tatyova. We get a Glasspool Mimic. We'll put a Wooded Foothills into play. That's going to trigger Tatyova. We draw ourselves another fetch land. Now let's cast our Cultivate. We'll get a forest and an island. We'll put the island into play tapped. This is a lot of value, guys. A lot of value. That's going to trigger Tatyova and Kodama. We draw a land, a Boseiju notably. We'll put our forest into play. That triggers Tatyova. And we get ourselves a Venser. Finally, we'll crack our Wooded Foothills. We'll get ourselves a Temple Garden. We'll lose the 2 life. That triggers Tatyova and Kodama. We'll put an island into play. That triggers Tatyova again. We draw Illuminate Primordial. Okay, there's more creature removal. We're really happy to see that. And then a Castle Garen Brig. Now let's get down our Soul Herder. Puts a lot of triggers back onto the stack. So just be aware of this, guys. If you do play this deck in paper, this is the kind of shenanigans you're going to have to get up to, and it's going to take quite a bit of math. So really be prepared for that. So So we'll draw thanks to the Great Henge. That's a land and a Sylvan Library. We won't use Emil here. We'll also say no to Soul of the Harvest. And let's cheat some more permanents into play. Let's get down Selvala. I'll put lots of triggers on the stack. We get a Ghostway, a land, no to Emil, no to Soul of the Harvest. Let's use Kodama. We'll just put a forest into play. That'll trigger Tatyova. Now after all of that, let's move to combat. I think we'll send Kodama as well as Soul of the Harvest towards the Tawnos player. That's all we'll send in. Now we have enough mana to hold up our Ghostway. So that may cause us to actually deck ourselves. So we might have to really be careful in doing that, but we're pretty well set up at the moment. Let's see if we can get back to our next turn. That actually causes the Tawnos player to scoop it up there. Alright, well, that's easy done. Now we have 2 players left to worry about. So now we're just going to move to our end step. Our Soul Herder will trigger. We'll target our Angel of the Ruin. When that re-ETBs, we have about 100 triggers that go on the stack. So our first Angel of the Ruin trigger, we're going to take out the Shadow Spear and the Thought Vessel. Our second one, we'll go the Mana Crypt and the Arcane Signet. Soul Herder is going to get a 1/1 counter. We're going to draw cards thanks to the Great Henge, a Farseek, and a Yorion. No to Emil. No to Soul of the Harvest. Kodama's first trigger. We'll just put a land into play. That triggers Tatyova to draw a card. Second Kodama trigger. We'll just put yet another land into play. And we'll draw another card from Tatyova. I think as funny as this is to say, well, there we get Eerie Interlude, so another flicker effect. Yeah, as funny as it is, I think we may actually have to start destroying some of our card draw effects just so we don't deck ourselves. Now we do have to discard down to 7, so we'll just keep the most important things. So let's get rid of some of our ramp pieces as well as card draw pieces that we don't really need at the moment. And that is what we have left in our hand. So now we go to the Mayael player's turn. They start by playing a land for turn. Now they activate their commander. Well, the Oona player has been holding up priority here for quite a while, so unless they have something to play, no, they actually just decide to scoop it up there. So I think they know that it's going to pretty much be all but over now, especially seeing as we have access to Emil at the moment to be able to flicker whatever we need. So let's see if the Mayael player can find anything off of this. But if not, we should be able to end it on our next turn. They find themselves an Avacyn Angel of Hope. Well, that definitely isn't a bad find, that's for sure. Indestructible is very powerful. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually get around Vence's effect of being able to bounce things. Next, Mayael activates their Godsire, so they're going to make an 8/8 beast. Now they crack their fetch land. They find themselves a Stomping Ground. They have it come into play tapped. Now they move to their end step. And let's move to our turn. We draw a land for turn. Alright, well I think it's time for Vence to do some work here, so let's start by casting him. That puts another 100 triggers on the stack. Let's start by bouncing Avacyn. And we'll also target their Indestructible Worm. We'll draw some cards. A Mystic Reflection. Oh, that is a favorite card of mine in this deck. And a Thassa. No to Emil. No to Soul of the Harvest. Let's use Kodama. We'll put a land into play. That triggers Tatyova, we'll draw. We get a Seagate Restoration. And then we'll actually say no to this trigger because I think we have enough damage on board to actually get it done. Let's move to combat. We'll swing in with everything that we can. Now, unfortunately, it has been a little while and our opponent hasn't actually responded to our attacker's step yet. So I think either our opponent is away from keyboard or they might be a little salty with the really big turns and value plays we just had. So I think we'll actually call it there, guys. All right, well, that is the game. Let's go to the review and discuss what happened. Well, you couldn't have asked for a better showing for the deck. We were able to land a strong ramp piece which allowed us to resolve an early Kodama, and once he stuck, he began generating us massive value immediately. This was largely helped by having access to 2 card draw sources as well as a doubling effect in Panharmonicon. Continually fueling Kodama's ability by drawing cards is key in maximally abusing his ability, and the end result is what we saw today. Well, that's it for today's video. If you're a value player who loves drawing cards, cheating costs, and playing big expensive permanents, then Kodama and Ishai are one of the best options you can play. Just keep in mind you also need to be really good at tracking your triggers too. Until next time, guys.